I love how
It
when
is
they're
the
getting on the
least
Landstriders
interesting.
and they won't let him on, and he's like, ah. Welcome back to Nerd Legion. We are concluding the year 1982 in our fantasy film marathon of the 1980s. We have finished
What a year it's been.
years of 1980s films. So what is the best film of 1980, 81, and 82?
Oh,
Dylan?
man. Wow. I mean, there's just so many to choose from. Not good ones. There's just so many to choose from. I think like the bulk of the 1980s fantasy movies was in this first 3 years.
And why was it Sorceress? And if you haven't seen our Sorceress episode, guys, go watch
It's
that.
definitely not Sorceress. I think, you know, I there's a soft spot in my heart for Ator because I grew up with the MST3K versions of Cave Dwellers, which is the second Ator movie that the Blade Master that we'll see later in
You
this
think that
series.
is the best movie of the
No,
first
no.
3 years?
I said I have a soft spot for it. Well, are you asking me what's objectively the
What is
most
the best
well-made movie?
Of the
Or
first 3
my
years of the
favorite?
1980s?
Because my favorite and what is the best
That's fine.
are two different
Exactly.
things.
What is the best movie?
I mean, I think what was it? The one with the dragon, Sorcerer? What was the name? I
The
can't
Sword,
even
the
remember
Sorcerer.
the
You
name.
mean
They're
Dragon Slayer?
all the Dragon Slayer. That's all the names just kind of like blend together. I would say either Dragon Slayer or Conan the Barbarian. I mean, honestly, I'm not as high on Conan as like a lot of people are. So I'm gonna say Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer was my opinion. In my opinion, the best movie we've seen so far.
All right. Here's my top 3 in order.
Oh, you have a top 3? Wow. Okay.
Excalibur is the best one, followed by Time Bandits, followed by Dragon Slayer. Those are the top 3. I will say Dragon Slayer was the most surprising in that I had not seen it, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be. So
Fair enough.
I thought Dragon Slayer was really good. So that was the most surprising to me overall. The other, I'd say number 2 most surprising was The Sword and the Sorcerer, which was like way better than it had any right to be given the budget that it had when they made it.
So now I got to do my second and third.
Okay,
then.
you do it.
So I would go Dragon Slayer and then Conan the Barbarian and then Excalibur for my third one. Mostly because I just really like the cinematography in Excalibur. But
Yeah, great.
now, should we say, do you have a different one that's not in that top 3 that is your most enjoyable watch? Like, what did you have the most just pure fun watching?
Ooh. Honestly, Hawk the Slayer, probably.
Really? All right. That had some moments. I think even at the beginning when you had the coffin with like the pulsating faces and all, that's an effect where you're like, whoa, that's a cool effect.
No, that was The Sword and the
Yeah.
Sorcerer. That was The Sword and the Sorcerer with the faces. Hawk the
crap,
Slayer
you're
was
right.
the
Hawk the
British one
Slayer.
where they had the glowing sword at the beginning. It was the sword that flew around, and he had to go meet the
yeah.
elf and the dwarf.
Oh yeah.
And
that's
they
right.
they
That's
through all the
right.
glowing
Yes.
bouncy balls into the castle.
That's right.
I thought that one was
All
very
right.
fun.
I mean, I think Hawk the Slayer, because that one's got Jack Palance in it too,
Yep.
doesn't
Yep.
it? Like, yeah, that's okay. That one was a lot of fun, but I think I also had an equal amount of fun, if not maybe even a little bit more, watching Beastmaster.
True.
Because Beastmaster is just so lovably goofy. And so, like, I mean, when we were talking about it, when we do the, you can go back and watch the episode now as you see this, but when we were doing the watch along, just like the way we were able to sort of predict what was going to happen and just shout it out and then it would happen, it was hilarious. That it was that predictable, but it was still that much fun when it did happen.
Yeah, Ator was fun too. I mean, there are some fun
Yeah.
campy B movies in here. What is the worst movie we've seen, and why is it Sorceress?
It's definitely Sorceress. It's just like I said, Sorceress it just makes you feel icky. It just makes you feel like you want to take a shower after you watch it, and not in like I need a cold shower after that. More like I need to like get this whatever this film is off me, and I'm saying film in every use of the word film in this case, So that's Sorceress.
What was the most disappointing movie relative to your memory of having seen it, and why was it Dark Crystal?
I was going to say that's a good segue. That's a good segue to the movie that we're going to watch today, because I would have to say it is Dark Crystal, and don't get me wrong, Dark Crystal is still a movie that I really like, but I didn't like it as much this time. I think this time the just the glaring like dullness of the story kind of started to come through a little bit, and kind of just I started catching myself like going to other monitors, clicking around a little bit, and I was like, no, you're watching this. You have to, I had trouble focusing this time around more than I have in the past. There's a lot of things I like about it, but my opinion of it has lessened of late.
I think what's so interesting about the Dark Crystal is that it's very visually interesting, right? And the world they create and the creatures they create and Jim Henson, made for this film are amazing. And so I think that just purely as something to look at, it is very cool. But as a narrative, it is not great. And the main characters in particular, the two Gelflings, are horrendously boring and also badly voice acted. So it really does drag it down. And also, I think this film gets a little bit masturbatory at times in that they know that the creatures are really cool. And so they design scenes that are just them doing cool stuff with puppets that go on way too long, such as the Skeksis eating scene, which is way too long, of them feasting at this table. And it's really just an excuse to show off the puppetry and to have these little critters that are moving on the table and show you all the gross things that they're eating. And it's completely unnecessary to the plot and very long and very superfluous.
If you look at the movie as just an incredible tech demo for the absolute unquestionable pinnacle of puppetry, the Dark Crystal is definitely that.
Oh, yeah.
There is no better example of the top of what puppetry can do on film than what you see in the Dark Crystal. But at the same time, it does start to feel like kind of a tech demo. That I was thinking the exact same thing during the dinner scene, especially, where I'm like, wow, they're doing a lot of really neat movement stuff. They're doing a lot of fun, like gross out kind of stuff, and you can tell the people that are making it are having a lot of fun making it, because you can just picture them behind the scenes. It's like, he grabs this thing and it's wiggling in his mouth, and then like this is dripping out and all that, and you can tell they're just having like the best time of their lives, and I'm happy for them. I'm glad they did. But as a viewer who's not as into puppets as they are, it does start to drag on a little bit, And I say this in the nicest way, because I have nothing but the utmost respect for Jim Henson and Frank Oz and like everyone on that crew who made this, because it is incredible work from top to bottom, visually again, and mechanically, and the soundtrack is great too. But yeah, story wise, it really just it falls flat for me now more than ever,
Yeah, because it really is quite a generic storyline where it feels very tropey. And, perhaps this is because we've had so much fantasy since the release of The Dark Crystal. Maybe it felt...
Maybe we're conditioned now.
Yeah, I wasn't alive in 1982, so obviously I saw this probably, 10 years after it was released minimum. But to return to The Dark Crystal today, it just feels very tropey in that, here's this menacing crystal who has very ill-defined powers. In fact, we don't really know what the powers of the Dark Crystal are at any given point in time. We don't really understand the prophecy that's being told, where what happens if the shard of the crystal is returned. We know that if it's not returned, then the Skeksis gain power over the stars, whatever the hell that means. And we don't really understand what the Skeksis do with it when they're gazing into the Dark Crystal themselves, because that enslaves non-Skeksis. So we're never even really told why the Skeksis are immune to it, or if they're powered up by it, or how this gives them power, what powers they have. It's just really sloppy. Right, and it is told as a very, I think, hollow hero's tale for Jen, the Gelfling, who honestly doesn't even display that much heroism or anything interesting at all throughout the course of this film.
Yeah, he kind of just gets dragged along by everybody else, and he's like, oh, "Okay, I'll do this. Okay, I'll do this." Like he doesn't have a lot of agency. My interpretation of the story is it's almost like an allegory for like the fall into sin, sort of in a biblical sense, where this crystal, what we're sort of led to believe is this crystal was sort of a thing that kept their world, wonderful and peaceful and tranquil and all that. And these beings decided that they would break the crystal because that would allow them to split their psyches into good and bad and have more agency over what they're doing rather than being trapped, heaven locked, as you could say, I guess. But that's
inferring
what I gathered
all
from
of that, and we don't get
no, because it is heavily implied when they kind of like merge together again in the end, and so it is. I feel like that is implied enough that you can get that out of the story. But you really have to work to do it. Like I had to really be like, okay, like what in the world is the crystal, doing, and what is it for, and
why did these things show up from outer space and damage the crystal and split into these two races? You never really truly get the motivations for either the Skeksis or the Mystics in this. It's just there's not a lot compelling about the plot. It's a lot of being told what is happening without explanation and without even also demonstration of the powers. Like the Skeksis, the most menace that they have is controlling their bug crabs. What are those things called?
The
Garthim.
The
Garthim.
Right.
They basically just send them around to kill and or capture people for them, and they turn other creatures into slaves for them, but they don't appear really to have significant magical powers as a result of the crystal, which is weird.
Yeah, it's also, kind of, they need to drain the life from other things, preferably Gelflings, to live. They got to juice the Gelflings. They ran out of Gelflings. They got to juice the pod people or the Podlings. And, so I guess it's good they're around, because if not, they would have never made it to like the conjuncture, whatever it is, where the suns are going to overlap. And that's like the moment where they can, potentially take over the universe or whatever. So it is all very loose. But again, like, I think at the end of the day, it was kind of like Jim Henson wanted to make a fantasy puppet movie to really push the limits of what they were doing. Oh, we need a story with this? Okay, well, let me work on it.
Feels very similar to George Lucas's approach to Willow, if I'm being honest. Oh, we need a vehicle for Industrial Light and Magic to do all these cool effects. I got this kind of lame fantasy
movies
plot
like this
for
exist. My brother and I have a thing for bad fighting game movies. And there's one called King of Fighters, which is, based on the King of Fighters video game franchise. But and it stars Ray Park, who played Darth Maul in the Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. And the entire cast is filled up with stunt people as portraying these different fighting game characters. And as you watch the movie, you realize that you're just basically watching a long reel for all their stunt work, because the story is almost non-existent and hilariously weird and bad. Like, they have one character that's Asian in the video game, and they have him portrayed as an Asian child as a child in a flashback, but he's portrayed by a white man as an adult. So, but I guess he looks Asian enough for the 90s. I wish I was making this up, but this is actually in King of Fighters. Actually, it might have been early 2000s. But so the story, everything else around it, the music. Do you like Papa Roach? It's like that kind of, it's that era. That it really is metal. Really is just a demo. It's a pretty good demo for fight choreography. They're all very accomplished stunt people. So, it's that kind of thing. It's one of those movies where there is an ulterior motive to why they made it.
Are you looking
just
forward
like
to
Wicked is all about this music, I guess. I don't know.
Are you looking forward to the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2, Noah, which we will inevitably be reviewing on this channel?
Sure, yeah, why not? The first one was okay.
The first one was surprisingly okay.
It was okay.
Of the new Mortal Kombat movies. It was exactly what you would want of a Mortal Kombat movie. Is it good?
Sure.
No. Is it a Mortal Kombat movie that checks all the boxes of being a Mortal Kombat movie? Yes. Also has the same Scorpion played by the same actor who was in Shogun.
Yeah. Great actor.
Great actor.
Yeah, and great Scorpion too. Great Scorpion. But I mean, and this is definitely a movie with an ulterior motive, shall we say? It's one of those things you might call a passion project. But despite all that, I really like the Dark Crystal. Again, like as a whole, yes, the story is incredibly lacking. Some of the voice acting falters, but I will watch this again at some point because just visually it is so much fun to just be in this universe.
And really just the production design and the way that they use all the monsters and the way every time it feels like every scene there's a surprising new monster that you haven't seen before that looks very different from anything else. So just from a visual perspective, the hits keep coming. And I think that's what really makes the Dark Crystal memorable. Obviously the puppetry, but the fact that they were able to make all the puppets so distinct from one another. And they even
there's one notable exception.
Oh.
And that's what was it, Fizzwig, the dog thing, which is
Fizzgig.
It's just a Muppet.
I love Fizzgig.
It's just a Muppet with extra teeth. I hate that.
How
thing.
dare you? I love Fizzgig.
It's just whenever it opens its mouth, it's just like shut up, shut up, shut up. The sounds
Fizzgig.
it makes.
I think he's great.
Just so annoying.
I love how when they're getting on the Landstriders and they won't let him on, and he's like,
No, Fizzgig. You stay here. Dole. Oh, all right. Come on. Tamar, Fizzgig. Tamar. Dobar.
I know, like
it's great.
It's that he stands out as not belonging. I think in the rest of that universe, everything else looks so.
Tell Doe he's wrong in the comments.
Made and all that.
Fizzgig represent.
And you've got this little hand puppet.
I love it. I also love how they just like throw him sometimes. So, for example, when he jumps on the Landstrider, it's clearly someone just throwing him on top.
I know, that's the thing. There's not really out in a movie filled with incredible intricate puppets. You just have a sock puppet.
I love it.
And that's it.
I love it.
He does this.
I don't care.
This is the only thing it does. Maybe its eyes move a little bit, but like it is.
I think he's funny.
It is. It's like, all right, we got to put a Muppet in here for the kids. Make something that looks like a Muppet. Make it a dog Muppet. Yeah.
I think one of the problems is that they have, which I think is cleverly subverted by sound design, is that the Skeksis all kind of look the same, but you have to be able to tell them apart because you need to know which one is the.
Oh, that's so racist.
The Skeksis. I am a Skeksis. Look, the Mystics all look the same too. Let's be honest.
Wow. I don't know if I can be on the show anymore.
But the Skeksis, the way they differentiate them is through sound. So the Chamberlain, who is exiled, he's the one who makes that really annoying noise. So you can always tell it's him, which is important because we need to know which one he is.
I hate your whimper.
So they do things when they realize, hey, perhaps the subtleties of these puppets are going to be lost on people who need to remember who these characters are. So they make changes that make sense.
The Skeksis actually have personalities to them, which is the most personality you see in the movie. Because I think partially because of what you said is they needed a way to differentiate them, but also because they kind of carry it narratively a little bit where, you know, they are kind of the ones driving the story to a certain extent because you've got sort of the infighting at the beginning, the Chamberlain is exiled, the rest of the rest of the crew is like hanging out, juicing podlings and finding out it's not working as well as it needs to. Like whenever we cut back to the Skeksis, I feel like we're really kind of like seeing the movie move forward. Whereas when we're with the Gelflings, especially with Jen, it feels like he's resisting the entire time and the story is kind of tugging him along, which at the beginning of every typical hero's journey, the hero resists the call to adventure. That is one of the primary hallmarks of the beginning of that journey. But I feel like he just never gets out of that stage through the entire thing, which makes it kind of irritating. And you're like, come on, Jen, let's grow a backbone. Like do a little bit, be a little bit heroic at least, you know? So, yeah.
I mean, but my main problem with Jen is that he's incredibly boring. He lacks agency and his voice acting is terrible. He sounds so generic in this film. Stephen Garlick, who does the voice for him, is just the same like wide-eyed protagonist. Oh no, what is happening? It's so bad, the entire movie. One of the least memorable protagonists, I think, in all of the films that we've watched so far. Absolutely no character, absolutely no interesting motivation, just awful.
Ogre, follow the greatest son. But master, I'm only a Gelfling.
Well, when you meet up with Kira, she immediately becomes a more interesting character because she, has a more interesting backstory. She, is more in tune with the world. She's almost like again, if we compare this to throw in the good old Hero of a Thousand Faces, Hero's Journey thing, like she is kind of his guide to this new world, but she's not like the elderly guide that you usually get. She's not an Obi-Wan. She's more like a Han and Obi-Wan put together, sort of, if we're using Star Wars terms here, which I think is an easy facsimile for people to understand. But she's immediately a more interesting character, which makes Jen falter even more. And then, yeah, the way his voice is done is hard to describe other than it's a very sort of generic animated protagonist voice sound that you would hear in a lot of cartoons and things in the late 70s, early 80s. I feel like that voice and that delivery is something I heard from like so many protagonists all throughout my childhood. Spike Witwicky in the Transformers cartoon strikes me as another character that has that exact same voice, where there's always that, oh boy, what are we gonna do? Oh wow, I've never seen that before. Ooh, where it's just like a little bit too wide-eyed, a little bit too, ooh wow, there has to be a little bit of personality in there somewhere. And yeah, that did stand out to me too, where it was like, it's kind of, it just feels kind of generic for sure. So that does hold it back a little bit these days. I think at the time that was more what people were used to, because, Luke Skywalker for the first part of A New Hope speaks in a very similar manner, because that was typical. But as the movie goes on, as he becomes more experienced in the world, going to Empire, going to Jedi, the character changes a lot, right? So you can certainly have a character sound like that at the beginning, but they need to grow over time. And so part of how the character delivers their lines and speaks is part of showing us that growth of character over the course of the adventure. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't really change from the beginning to the end with Jen. Truly outrageous. That's Gem, by the way. I know it's Gem, but Jen is close enough.
That's
okay?
right. There you go.
It's a deep cut. I know, but this is why you watch the show, right?
Other 80s references. The problem too is that Jen is just completely upstaged by Agra at all times, who's about a million.
She's the best character in this.
Yeah, about a million times more interesting, and it just comes across as very weak protagonist with very weak motivations. Oh, my dying teacher told me this, but I don't know what to do with this. I'm so ignorant, and I need everyone else to tell me what to do with this shard. Yeah. It's just bad, and it doesn't make you really root for Jen or Kira in any kind of meaningful way. I felt worse for the Podlings than I did for Jen and Kira.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny that the Gelflings end up being the least interesting characters in the movie. When
I also don't care that all the Gelflings have been juiced, by the way. Fuck Gelflings.
Oh, it's okay. They got the good juice, but we're down to two.
All I'm going to say is if the Gelflings hadn't been juiced, then the Skeksis wouldn't have been able to live long enough for the crystal to be healed. So it's a good thing the Gelflings got juiced in the end. Did the ends justify the means?
Now they can start rebuilding the Gelfling population, but I guess they'll all be really inbred now. I don't know. Good luck, Gelflings. But what was I going to say? Yeah, so the thing that really does stand out, though, about Jen and Kira, right? Kira, yeah. Is the puppetry, again, which shouldn't surprise you. That's what this is all about. But, when they have them running and everything like that, when they have them doing all these agile moves and everything, like it's really incredible. And that's kind of like, that's their thing, right? They are supposed to be the puppets where we get to see the agility they're able to impart into puppets, right? And they do an excellent job. Like a lot of scenes where they're like running around and stuff like that. Like the running especially looks so fluid. Where I'm like, is that like a person in a costume from like a long way away? I'm like, definitely not in some of those scenes, at least. So that, they're like, okay, here's our skinny agile puppets. This is how we're going to show off this part of what we can do. It's unfortunate that they became the protagonists and then ended up kind of being not super interesting, right? Because a lot of the other puppets, like the Skeksis, the Mystics, the Garthim, Agra, these are all people who are in suits with other people controlling upper armatures and things like that, right? So I'm sure the person in the suit is controlling some of it, and then I would guess that there's other parts that are being remote controlled as well. So there's that kind of neat marriage of technology, but the Gelflings feel like just pure puppets, right? There's nobody inside that costume, right? So I think that's kind of the point of the Gelflings, is to get that pure, unadulterated humanoid puppetry stuff going, and in that part really succeeds, like everything else does.
And I think they also do a good job of when they have to have a real person in as a body double effectively for the puppets. So one scene, for example, is when Jen is climbing inside the like orange lava core of the Skeksis castle. They do a good job of cheating the camera angles so it's not super noticeable that it isn't a puppet. So when they have to use body doubles, it's well done. And there's just certain things I think you're just not going to be able to use a puppet for, right? But they do hide it very well, so it does maintain kind of the same visuals throughout the entire film.
So I'm gonna look that up actually, because I'm curious. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there was a couple of them, but I thought there were some running shots where it was just kind of like moving the puppet itself. But either way, look good. I don't know. Whatever. Augur was the best though. She's a character you want to like see on the screen more, because her personality just kind of, she's got the most personality of like anyone in that movie by like 1,000 miles. You know? It's great.
I agree. And especially what they did with her being able to take her eye out and everything too, I think is really fun and really compelling. Whereas a lot of the other characters just, while they might be visually interesting, they don't actually hold up in terms of any kind of like on-screen characterization or story presence. And I think that's it. I do have to stop myself and remember that this is a movie for kids. And I, in fact, watched this with my 5-year-old son, who liked it quite a bit. And in contrast to my complaining about the feast scene, he thought the feast scene was very funny. And he really enjoyed it. So, while this may not pass the test for adult sensibilities, I think for kids, there is still something magical about this movie, which is why we have fond memories of it, honestly. And it's obvious that Jim Henson and Frank Oz, they really tapped into something for children, because not only did they come into Sesame Street and add all the Muppets there, but then they had the Muppet Show in the late 70s and early 80s. And so this was omnipresent. And indeed,
right.
They created, Jim Henson created this massive empire that has been enormously successful for a number of years, has actually at this point in time influenced and inspired generations of puppeteers. So how can you say that this was a failure? And like, we all have memories of our childhood, of not only Dark Crystal, but Muppets, but the characters on Sesame Street. So this has been enormously influential. And so that's why when I look back at this now, I kind of just have to remind myself that this is not for me. Right. And honestly, has a dark tone that is a little bit surprising for a kid's movie.
Right. Some of the effects when when the first podling is juiced and you see its face kind of collapse and its eyes turn white, you're like, oh wow, that's kind of intense
a mind slave of the Skeksis. I mean, that's pretty heavy.
Sure, yeah, and I remember being, kind of not traumatized, but I remember being like weirded out by that as a kid, and a lot of stuff in the movie. But you like to be creeped out by stuff as a kid, when you watch that. So that was one of the things I always liked about it. Is I like things that make me feel uncomfortable, and so this movie definitely was able to do that. But it's going back to your point earlier. I don't think anyone can call this movie bad. It's definitely not bad. It's a great movie. But it is a movie that I feel like story-wise, you just kind of inevitably outgrow, where it's tough to set aside, the lack when it comes to the storytelling, when you're watching everything. I still enjoyed watching it again for this, as I prepped for this show, but I'm sad to say I feel like I've kind of outgrown it a little bit, so that when I watch it from now on, which I will, I'm not gonna be able to help myself but thinking like, okay, how would I fix this story wise? What did they need to include to, just keep things a little bit more cohesive? How could they show, not tell, all that kind of stuff. I think the movie could have used a little bit of that. And I think they tried to really, when they did the Netflix show, 5-6 years ago, something like that. Was it even that long ago? The Age of Resistance or something like that. It was a prequel series. They really went hard on trying to, tell a good story and kind of expand on this universe, which, there was a lot to expand on because the movie didn't tell you a lot. So I did appreciate it for that.
Yeah, there's a lot to work with in terms of the world because the world is not fleshed out in this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can see now, I don't necessarily agree because for me, I don't need any more Dark Crystal than the Dark Crystal offers. It's not something that I felt was lacking, but I could have said the same thing about the Karate Kid, and yet Cobra Kai is great, right?
You never know.
And I haven't seen the Dark Crystal Netflix show, but it has excellent reviews, guys, and people say it's really good. So it's probably way better than this movie, I would assume, and also, had the same
storytelling wise, yeah,
and also this, similar levels of puppeteering, as I understand. So it's accomplished in that sense as well. But
I'd agree.
It is a property that I would not think, like Willow, would be ripe for remaking in our contemporary era 40 years later.
You can't take a cult classic and expect to make a mainstream hit out of it. And I think that's where those two IPs
unless you're a Cobra
right?
Kai.
Well, see, Karate Kid wasn't a cult classic. That was a pretty mainstream hit when it came out. So I don't think that falls in that category, honestly. Whereas, if I were going to, use another example, I would say if they were going to try to make like a HBO series based on Big Trouble in Little China, right? I don't think it would do very well because
bring Kurt Russell back.
That movie is a huge cult. That movie has a huge cult following. I love that movie, right? But I don't know if a TV series of it would work,
Yeah, I think also, at least in the original Karate Kid, you had some interesting characters to work with that were set up. And in Cobra Kai, you also benefited massively from them not trying to overshoot what it was, which is a teenager soap opera / shonen manga. They just nailed that. They didn't try and deviate from it. They brought all of the actors back, which was crazy, and set it in the future. So they really did make it for the last generation and also for kids today, which is I mean it's really an astounding feat that they managed to set this up, but it is very good.
They followed it to such a great conclusion, as this has become our Cobra Kai episode apparently now, where they when they started the show off, they took it to such a logical place in such a funny way, right? Where Danny would become a used car salesman that would use his karate background as a sales thing, right?
To be fair,
whatever, a car salesman that used his karate reputation to sell cars and gave out a bonsai tree with each person. That's hilarious, and that the bully ends up being sort of a loser in life and aimless and all that, and peaked in high school. I love that that's where we started, and then kind of where do the characters go from that very logical starting point to the completely illogical story that follows, where it's rival dojos and
it's great though,
ridiculous school cafeteria fights and all that, and in the end karate is the enemy, because if they all just were in book club, none of this would have ever happened, right? So,
but they wouldn't have also gained the same amount of character through the training. Anyway, it's great, guys. If you haven't seen Cobra Kai, the reason why we're bringing it up is it's another famous 80s movie that was successful. But the point why I'm saying this is I think it's likely that the success of Cobra Kai probably influenced the creation of the Dark Crystal TV series and the Willow TV series. Because it's more, hey, these 80s movies are great. Let's try and revive the IP because we'll pull in all of the old generation and then we'll hook a new generation at the same time, right? But
they'll get their kids to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think, Cobra Kai is different because Cobra Kai is really good. And it's hard. And not to say the Dark Crystal show isn't good, because people say it is good. People also say the Willow show is terrible.
It was terrible. It was so sad. I was so sad that it was so bad. I mean, the acting wasn't the bad part about it. It was one of those things where the story was just kind of trash, and it was yet another example of let's take your childhood hero and make them a miserable failure again. I just hate that stuff. I don't know if it necessarily deserved to be deleted from history, but like, what is the term that ancient Rome used when they just like deleted someone completely from the records?
Well, it was like, Greek. It was ostracized.
Oh, Greek.
It was in Athens. So what happened in ancient
phrase.
Athens is that because it was a direct democracy, right? Because it was just a city.
Mm-hmm.
It was a city-state. And so they were able to ostracize people by having a vote of who to vote out of Athens by all of the people in Athens, which is really messed up, but they did it.
Yeah, so I don't know if that show deserved to be like pulled from Disney Plus the way it was, but at the same time, it was not a worthy follow-up to the magnificent film, which is Willow. I can't say that with a straight face. I love that movie, though.
Well, and by the way, we already have reviewed Willow, even though we've reviewed Willow and Time Bandits outside of the scope of the chronological 80s marathon that we've been undergoing. Those are already done, so they're not going to be they were done prior to the start of this, so you can find them also on this channel if you're interested.
I'm sure we'll put them on the same playlist this is on. Just
it's in the Nerd
It
Legion
should be if it's not. But
playlist. You can easily find it.
Sure. We need to make an 80s specific one now too, though.
We can do that
at this point. All right. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Enough talking shop. Let's. So I don't know if there's really. The music is really good in the Dark Crystal. I really like the theme. The Landstriders always freaked me out when I was a kid.
I think they're cool.
Something about them. They look cool, but they're definitely the weirdest looking.
They move animals. Like a giraffe runs, which is fun.
I think they freak me out in the same way that the Wheelers freak me out in Return to Oz, in that you can tell it's a human in a costume, but they're just not moving like a human normally moves, and that is disturbing, right? And so that maybe that's why it always freaked me out a little bit. And one of them gets like tossed off a cliff too, so there's that. In kind of a silly fight. Later on.
And also they introduced in that same fight the Deus Ex Machina of Kira having wings, to which her response is, "Oh, well, of course you don't have wings. You're a boy too." Okay, I guess.
I mean, like he would know, being the only male Gelfling left in the world, and how would she know that male Gelflings don't have wings? I guess
knows?
Maybe her like adoptive parents told her.
Who
I
knows?
don't know. Yeah. Either way, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add. I mean, it's just a great, magnificent example of the pinnacle of puppetry. What can you say? It's visually fantastic. I will definitely watch it again, just like I said before, just to be in that universe a little bit. But I think as you get older, the story starts to ring a little bit hollow, and that's going to be a barrier for some people, but I think it's still very watchable and definitely one of the better fantasy movies to come out of the 80s. It's in the top 10 for sure. Oh, come on. Top 10? It's got to be in the top 10. We'll revisit this when we get to the end of 1989, but I'm pretty sure it's in the top 10.
I don't think so. I think it's in the top 10 of the first 3 years of the 1980s films, but like it's already just straight up worse than Excalibur, Dragon Slayer, Clash of the Titans, Time Bandits, Conan, Sword and the Sorcerer.
You would put Clash of the Titans on that list?
Oh yeah, it's better than this movie.
You would put Bubo above the puppetry?
Look, here's what I will say. Here's what I will say.
In the Dark Crystal, Monty.
Fizzgig greater than Bubo. Clash of the Titans greater than Dark Crystal.
I mean, Fizzgig
or Bubo.
Why? It's like
Fizzgig, though. It's not Bubo. Bubo is terrible.
It's like, do I want to be eaten by fire ants or piranhas? Either way, I'm going to be slowly chewed to death. But like, it's so I can't choose there. But I will say the Dark Crystal is better than Clash of the Titans. I will say that. Jim Henson puppetry is better to look at than Ray Harryhausen's stop motion, in my opinion. Hot take.
That is a hot take.
Hot take. I'm going to make a lot of old people angry by saying that, And that's no shade on Ray Harryhausen. That's just saying, in a visual sense, I prefer the Dark Crystal.
I will say they're close for me. I don't think Clash of the Titans is great, but I do think it has good moments, just like the Dark Crystal has good moments. But anyway, the point is like there are probably 5 films just in these 3 years that are better than The Dark Crystal. So,
well, we'll have to wait and see when we get to the end of 1989.
I think it's going to be tough because we have, there's a lot of decent movies still in the 80s. Legend, it's coming up.
Yeah, Legend. I'm looking forward to that one. That's like later 80s, though, isn't it?
Mid 80s. I think it's 85.
Mid 80s. Okay. Something like that.
Anyway, we're going to be into 1983. As we move forward, guys, we are going to take a break from this because there's going to be some other films that are coming out. The new Superman movie, Fantastic Four, some more schlock that no doubt we will have to suffer through in the
Alien
theaters.
TV show.
The Alien TV show. Yep, that's going to be in there.
All right.
So in July, there will be some stuff coming up for that for sure. In the meantime, we are going to proceed into 1983. And the next film, I think it might actually be interesting. Now, I haven't seen this movie, Doa, but I have seen the trailers. And it's called Fire and Ice. It came out in January of 1983. It is a animated film that uses heavy rotoscoping, which is where they film it and then they draw over the live actors. And it does visually look really cool, I will have to say. And it is directed by Ralph Bakshi, who is probably most famous for the film Cool World. He directed that. He was an animation director. And
that came out way after
early 90s. It's very famous because Brad Pitt is in it kind of in the earlier stage of his career. And it's like a combination of animation and live action, sort of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And so there's some interesting stuff about this. It was written by a couple of guys who had written Conan comics. And I'm intrigued by this also because this is one of those films that current famous directors have latched onto for being influential to them. And Robert Rodriguez has been saying for years he wants to do a live action remake of it, and he owns the rights to it currently. So it's not in production or anything, but Robert Rodriguez is a big fan of this film and has been trying to get a live action version of this made. This might actually be kind of a sleeper, Noah. I'm going to be interested to see how this turns out because it's intriguing. It's intriguing for sure.
It's a cult classic, so we'll see what that means. That can either mean it's great or it can mean it's terrible.
I will say about 1983, there aren't a lot of English language movies because the criteria for this has to be that English is the language in which the movie was created in. And it has to have a theatrical release. So there are films like Thor the Conqueror and Hercules that are originally in Italian. Hercules actually was also in English, so we will be watching that one, but that's later in the years. But Thor the Conqueror, Conquest would be another one. These are Italian language films. But there is one of the all-time 1980s fantasy cult classics in this year, which is Krull. And Krull.
Oh, yes.
Krull is just one of those movies that you should probably watch at some point if you want kind of the pinnacle of campy 1980s fantasy.
There's another one that I'm just looking up now, and I'm trying to remember if it's in the 80s or not. Oh. Yeah, we got Your Hunter from the Future, which is I would say it bridges the gap between sci-fi and fantasy. It's more sci-fi if I'm honest, but it's got a great theme song, so I'm kind of advocating for it. But I'll send Monty a trailer. We'll see how you feel about it.
We'll see if it's too sci-fi. Anyway, guys, that's it on The Dark Crystal. We'll be back next week for Fire and Ice. See you then.